Lucy Gray is a very compelling, enigmatic character. She's got a very mercurial sense of self, but she's always on her side when it comes to conflict with other characters in our story and with the world. I find her to be so interesting and wonderful. She's got a lot of amazing musical abilities, and she has a very strong connection to snakes, which was very fun to act and also very fun to do with the snakes we had on set. I remember reading the book in 2020 when it had come out, and we had one copy of the book that went through our house. So my mom read it first and said, Rachel needs to play this part, and then my sister read it and she said, Rachel needs to play this part. Finally, I got to read it, and I just absolutely fell in love with her sense of strength, and she was so sure of herself, and I really, really love that about her. I think it's so inspiring. But also, she gets to sing and play guitar, which is two things that I really love to do, and so getting to do that made it all the better for me to play this part. Working with Tom, who I worked with the most on this movie because we have so many scenes together, was such a joy. He brings this light to set and this inherent knowledge and sense of security in the material, in his own performance, and he's also so playful and truly like my goofiest friend. We just have such a nice time together. Getting to work with Peter Dinklage, fellow New Jersey resident fellow New Jersey born person, and I really adore him. We didn't have many scenes together, but the time we got to spend together off camera is something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life and for my career, because he's so inspiring to watch. Every take is different, yet it is perfect, and you don't really get that with a lot of actors. I absolutely adore Hunter Schafer. I think her as Tigress Snow is such perfect casting, and she brings this like old Hollywood beauty that we haven't seen in so long to this movie. And as a human being, she's just lovely. I've known Josh Andrés Rivera for 4 years now. He's my nearest and dearest, and so getting to share the screen with him again is something that I will remember for my life and everything that follows. He's such a beautiful actor. I'm so proud of him, not only off screen but on screen, and getting to see him rise in such an incredible role as Sejanus is wonderful. I adore Jason Schwartzman. He's actually in one of my favorite movies ever, and I got to talk to him about that. And also I got to sing with him on set, and his music is so wonderful. I was really nervous to play guitar and sing in front of him. He was so supportive and just so happy to be there. I didn't have any scenes with Viola Davis, and I was very intimidated to go up to her, but getting to watch her and her scene with Josh and her scenes with Tom, so inspiring as an actor. They really lead by example and teach by showing. And so I just had the time of my life on this set with my fellow actors. Francis is not only a wonderful director in every way, but he's also just a wonderful person. And so coming to set every day and getting to talk to him and hang out with him, the dinners we would go, after work, on the weekends, he's wonderful company, he's funny, and he's just such a lovely person who cares about the people around him, cares about his crew, cares about his cast, doesn't want people to feel overworked. It's really, really, really wonderful. And we both had a very similar idea for what Lucy Gray was going to be in this film, and bringing her to life from Suzanne Collins' wonderful depiction of her in the book. He has a very a deep love of music and a passion for that side of things, so a lot of our collaboration came on what she was going to sound like vocally, musically. It's such an important part in the story, in the book, and in our film. So having somebody who cares so much about the musical aspect was really, really important to me. And I trust him with my life, and I would make every movie with him if I could. There were so many. I mean, I kind of got thrust into things without a lot of rehearsal when it came to the stunts. I had a previous engagement, so I was thrust into a scene called The Bloodbath, which is the beginning of the games, and our camera operator, Dave Thompson, gingerly would push me out of the way of the camera because all of these kids are running at me with weapons and fists and angry faces, and I was terrified, and that worked for Lucy Gray, which was wonderful. I also got to spend time with real snakes on this set, and I got to film with 2 snakes, neither of which had names, but there's a sweet little garter snake that I kind of did a sleight of hand trick because you're not supposed to go hand first at snakes, and they wanted me to put the snake in my pocket, and I was very scared of getting bit or just scaring the animal. So I did a nice sleight of hand because the camera was behind me. And I named him Kevin for the day, even though he didn't have a name. And then after every take, they would yell cut, and I would put Kevin in the air, and everybody would clap for him, and we would say, "Great take, Kevin." And I hope Kevin's doing well, and I hope he sees the movie. There's definitely a physical resemblance, which is, I think, going to be really interesting for the fans to watch and to see the moments that Donald Sutherland depicted so beautifully, maybe not even knowing that he was doing so, where seeing Katniss is like seeing Lucy Gray for President Snow during the Quarter Quell and during the 74th Annual Hunger Games. But there's also a lot of personality connections. They're very strong-minded, strong-willed, and golden-hearted. I think Lucy Gray's intention is a little bit more fuzzy, and for Coriolanus, it's really hard to figure out what her intentions are, if she's a songbird or a snake or both. And there's also this amazing connection in a way, even though it's about how they are different, where Katniss is a fighter forced to perform and Lucy Gray is a performer forced to fight. And it's interesting to see nature versus nurture in this film with Lucy Gray, with Katniss, but then also with Coriolanus, because we know him to be a dictator, but we don't really know how he got there. And it doesn't seem like at the beginning of this film that he was born bad or that people are born bad. And so it's really, really an interesting dynamic to witness in our story. I think Hunger Games fans will love that it's something that is fresh. It's a fresh take on the films and the stories that we love so much from Suzanne Collins. It's also very, very true to the book that she wrote. Why would you want to change something that is so amazingly written? Suzanne created amazingly dynamic characters with so many facets, these multifaceted characters. I think they're going to really love the performances from our cast, and I think they're also just going to love the music, and that's my hope, because it was really my baby while we were shooting was the music in our film. And so I really think they're going to be excited to be welcomed back into Panem, but with a whole new lens of the characters that they already think they know so well.
A little bit about Coriolanus. Corio he's 18, he's in the academy in Panem, he's beginning to learn how to become a politician and a young kind of leader of Panem. It's 65 years before the Corio or the President Snow who we met in the original series, so he's not quite yet the evil dictator that we know him to be. He's this young, ambitious, kind of like zesty young man who is looking to kind of make a name for himself. But also his family is in dire need of food, and he's trying to keep up appearances while also trying to provide for his family. I think what drew me to Corio is, I mean, aside from being a fan of the franchise originally and going to see them when I was a teenager, what drew me to Corio specifically is his kind of his multitudes. Like, you know, he's not one thing. He's ambitious and he's hungry, but at the same time he tries to remain humble, and yet at the same time he wants to be the best in his class. And I think he's this person who contains just multitudes within him. And when I'm looking at a character, I always look to play someone who contradicts themselves, because I think that's what life is like. We have an amazing cast. We're very lucky. I'm very lucky. Rachel, Hunter, and Josh, you know, we have this awesome young cast that are like somewhat new on the scene but are making a huge name for themselves, each of them. And then we have this kind of like legendary OG cast who we all look up to, all of us, and then a massive extended cast of amazing international actors from all over the world. And I just think in the original series, you know, you read about it as a fan how much of a connection they all had, and I think it's a credit to the franchise that we were able to kind of like latch onto that chemistry as well, and it came back to life, I think, in a way that was really organic and fresh. And you know, I mean, Jason is one of the funniest people I've ever met, and brings this levity to the film, which I think really gives it another angle. And there's, you know, it's great to see these characters brought to life by people who are truly transformative. I mean, Viola does this amazing thing where like she steps on set as Viola and action starts, and all of a sudden she's Volumnia Gaul, and her voice and her face changes in a way that I've never seen an actor do before. So we are incredibly lucky, and I hope we get to do more. Francis is a really one-of-a-kind director. I feel lucky to be able to call him a director and a friend now, and lucky that he came back to this installment, because I think he loves the world, I think he loves the characters, and I think he loves Suzanne Collins, our incredible creator of the series. And I think he is someone who is able to, in a really unique way, take an enormous world and an enormous franchise and make it feel really intimate and specific, which I think is a testament to him and his skill and his talent, but also his humility and what he brings to the work. He makes a big film as if it's a really intimate family drama almost. And then, not to mention the action pieces that he brings to the movie. The way he shoots action is just so dynamic and so raw, and it hits you right in the chest. I feel very lucky to be working with Francis. Oh man, there's one scene, because Corio is always hungry at the beginning of the film because his family is struggling. There's a scene where Sejanus tries to sneak him a cookie, and it's in the book, so Josh and I knew it was coming, and somehow throughout this long day of filming with hundreds of people on set, Josh managed to make me crack probably about 100 times. We were trying to do this serious scene where I find out that the Hunger Games are happening, and Josh kept choosing the most inopportune time to hand me a cookie, and by the end of the scene we were both covered in crumbs and cookie junk all over us, and that is kind of mine and Josh's relationship really in a nutshell. We like to crack each other up on set when we can and throw the other one off and throw them curveballs. I think this movie is going to be quite rewarding to the fans of the original series, because there's a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of connections between this new installment, this prequel, and the original series, and a lot of explanation as to why President Snow in the original films, detests Katniss so much. I think Katniss in the original series reminds President Snow of Lucy Gray Baird, and we get to find that out in this movie and in this book, because it explains how Corio became who he becomes and how he becomes this dictator, and why his hunger for power grows so strong. And a lot of that is because of Lucy Gray and because of her kind of enigmatic nature that he can't quite understand. So when Katniss comes along later on, when he's a lot older and a lot more powerful, I think she scares him because it almost feels like going back in time. I think what fans are going to love most about the film is that it's a return to the games, a return to Panem without being a repeat. It feels like it honors everything we loved about the original franchise while also revealing so much more that is new and fresh, and answers a lot of unanswered questions about why our most beloved characters are how they are.
Sure. You know, one of the things that I was really excited about when I first read this manuscript was discovering that the world of the story takes place 64 years before the first book and the first movie, which gave me the opportunity for many more new sort of ways to world build. To figure out how to do a period piece was really, really exciting, and I enlisted production designer Uli Hanisch, who's German-based. And together we decided to sort of focus on kind of Reconstruction era Berlin right after World War II, since our story takes place just years after the dark days of war itself. And what that gave us was a sort of a look at what a city would look like with the rubble in the streets and the sort of reconstruction of old buildings and the erection of new buildings and that might lead into Panem. But it also gave us an opportunity to look at the more rudimentary nature of technology and how people would look differently in terms of their clothes. And we looked to that same era, the 40s and the 50s, for references of automobile design and clothing and hair and makeup. And so really, really fun. And it's just, it very much feels like a Hunger Games movie, but the world feels entirely new and fresh. Another one of the things that really drew me to wanting to do this project is we get to tell the origin story of a villain. And this is a character that everybody knows from the first books and the first movies and who everybody has learned and loved to hate. And so the challenge was to find a way for us to visualize and dramatize a very different kind of story. And so we find Snow at a much younger age. He's near the end of his high school years. He's hoping to go to college. But what we discover is that his family has fallen from grace, and they actually don't really have any money, and he doesn't sort of exist in the same hierarchy. And he's putting on a show for all his classmates, and he desperately needs to win the prize at graduation just to support his family and to put food on the table. And so we were able to get audiences to get behind him and to understand him and to empathize with him and to root for him with what he wants. But also fun to, through the journey of the story, show him sort of descend into darkness and become the Snow that we know from the other films. One of the really interesting aspects of this movie, and especially for fans of the book, I think, is that we get to see the sort of the origins of a lot of things. We get to see the origin of Snow, we get to see the origins of the games and how the games are changing, the origin of songs, all that kind of thing, those kinds of things. The other thing that it does is, I think, in a really interesting way, is once you get through the story in this movie, you start to look at characters in a different way. You actually can go back to the original movies and the original books and go, wow, I never understood that because I didn't know the backstory fully. And so if you go back to a movie like Catching Fire and you realize that Snow has come to 12, and you may not at the time of seeing Catching Fire thought Snow had ever been to District 12. And then you come here and you realize he has a big history with District 12 and a big history with somebody really special in his life in District 12. And that definitely informs the way he feels about District 12 in general, but also about Katniss coming from District 12 and what she represents. The cast is just phenomenal in this movie. Tom Blyth, who plays young Snow, kind of came out of the blue for me. I was not that familiar with his work before. I hadn't seen his show, Billy the Kid. And his audition came in kind of late in the game, and he really just blew everybody out of the water. I think one of the first things I was kind of drawn to, the physical side with the big blue eyes that, Donald Sutherland has, and I could see there could be some similarities. He could grow into looking and feeling like a Snow. But he's an amazing actor. He's a Juilliard-trained guy. He's really good at his craft. We knew he'd be able to play all the emotional aspects of the journey we needed him to go on. But what's most important for me is that he has an intelligence and a sophistication about him and a sense of control. And that was really important in believing that he could become somebody like Donald Sutherland's version of Snow. The department heads are fantastic. I mean, many of the people I've worked with a lot before, Yo Willems, who I go back to the music video days with, was the cinematographer. So we have a great shorthand and have sort of grown into a certain working style together and a certain visual style together, so that was fantastic. Trish Somerville, costume designer, she and I also go back to the video days and have done lots and lots of work together. The new addition is Uli Hanisch, who is a German-based production designer. And for me, that was a fantastic partnership on this movie, just because we were creating a brand new world. And he and I got to sort of team up and kind of craft what this kind of post-war Reconstruction era Panem looked like, and ended up being sort of guided by that era itself, the 40s and the 50s, and how that informed hair, makeup, wardrobe, styling, the look. And so that ended up sort of informing a lot of conversations that I had with Trish or with Yo or with props or, the music department, everything. I think Hunger Games franchise fans will love the film as a whole. I think that it stands alone as a very fresh and very unique and very relevant Hunger Games movie. But I think fans, compared to sort of new people coming in and discovering this movie for the first time without having read the other books, will have this kind of added layer of the sort of nostalgic connections, right? Because we're seeing origins of things that are familiar, they're going to find real joy in that. And to sort of discovering new meanings to lines of dialogue or the songs, or getting to see things like the hanging tree for the first time. One of the things that Uli, the production designer, and I decided to do was try and make this as authentic and as grounded as possible, and we wanted to shoot in as many real locations as possible. We only built really one set, which was Snow's apartment. Everything else was filmed on locations or in locations, and we had some building and some augmenting that we did to these locations, but it was just great because we could, have sort of immersive experiences for all the cast members and all the scenes. So I found an amazing arena called Centennial Hall in Poland that we shot the games in, to this like strange but beautiful kind of crematorium that we used for Dr. Gall's lab, to using the exterior of the Olympic Stadium in Berlin that, was where Jesse Owens ran in the, the Hitler Olympic Games, just kind of crazy locations, but really, really immersive.
I think it will be exciting for audiences to get to see that this is not just the story of a young Coriolanus Snow and the origins of how a young man grows to be the President Snow who we all loved to hate, but the origins of the Capitol as well, and of seeing, we've heard reference in the original movies to the war, to the dark days, but we have only ever really seen the Capitol as this place that, seen through Katniss's eyes, seen through the eyes of a person who's grown up in very different circumstances. We've never told a story before that takes place through the eyes of a young Capitol citizen, and especially somebody like Snow, who comes from great wealth and power, but whose family has fallen into hard times that he's trying desperately to conceal from his peers. But to see, both in our very early images in the film, to get a sense of the way that the war devastated the Capitol and its citizens, and what the destroyed version of the Capitol, not this sort of shiny product that it becomes, but in the midst of those dark days, what the Capitol had become. But to also then see, as you meet Snow at age 18 as a senior, at the academy, the beginnings of the Panem that you recognize, right down to the reconstruction of the old, but these new buildings that are going up, the cranes, the skyscrapers, the attempt for a city that has been devastated by war to rebuild, reimagine, and move on. And so architecturally, you're seeing things you haven't ever seen. And then when you get to the games, you're really seeing another origin story, that the games were not always filled with this incredible, sort of sci-fi effects of these arenas that are so elaborate, that it was once a much simpler affair. And the advent and the reasons why the games evolved the way that they did, and the role that Snow played in it. So I think there's a lot for people to see across the spectrum of Panem, through character, through the games, and through Snow, that I think people will find exciting, I hope. When we first meet Snow as a young man, we see that, he is a man very intent on keeping up appearances. He's ambitious, he's driven, but his hope is just to return his family to their former glory, to find a way to pay the bills. Nobody knows that when his father was killed during the war, that he doesn't seem to have done any really good financial planning, and that now the family is barely getting by. And it's really important to know that none of his peers know that. He is doing everything he can, with the help of Tigris, to sell the idea that they are still the all-powerful Snow family, that Snow does, of course, land on top. And he's a young man being pulled in competing directions. The warmth and optimism of someone like Tigris, finding out actually what their relationship was. We know by the time that the Mockingjay movies and the books that Tigris is ready to help take Snow down and to end his reign. But what we don't know up until this movie is that they were once like brother and sister. She's his cousin, she's his looks after him and sees the good in him. And he has his friendship with Sejanus, who also, I think they might have mixed feelings about each other, but they can at least somewhat be themselves with each other in a way that Snow can't be with his wealthier peers. And then you have the, very powerful mentoring force of Dr. Gall, Viola Davis's character, who sees in Snow his potential, his Machiavellian propensities, his trickiness, his charm, the chameleon in him, and hopes to bring out in him the kind of man that his father was, versus somebody like Highbottom, played by Peter Dinklage, who knows just how dark his father was and has every intention of stopping Snow from becoming like him. Well, one of the most exciting things in reading this book was to suddenly look with new eyes on the original books and movies and to understand that very, dramatic scene that takes place in Catching Fire in the first act, where Snow comes to visit Katniss and to tell her, like, look what you've started. You need to knock it off. You need to calm things down. That this is not his first time in 12. This is not the first time he's dealt with a defiant and unruly young woman in 12. This is actually harkens back to a really pivotal, painful, and transformational moment in his past. And it really does shed new light on his relationship with Katniss and how it feels to him to find himself back in 12. And also his knowledge of just how disruptive those girls from 12 can be. I think it's also his relationship to Mockingjays, to see that this symbol that Katniss becomes so associated with, and that becomes a symbol of rebellion. That he has his own history with the Mockingjays, and he's not a big fan, never was, and never will be. Well, a producer honestly could not ask for a better partner than Francis Lawrence. He's a really rare combination he has vision and he has confidence, and with that comes this incredible receptivity. And sometimes you will find in a creative partner that they can be either confident or receptive. But true confidence is about actually really wanting and drawing out the best from all of collaborators, all of your department heads, your actors. And Francis's sets, they're incredibly familial, they're inclusive. We all hang out a lot outside of the set. And you see with each department head the way, he really brings the best from everybody, and everybody feels like, Francis wants you to bring him your best ideas, to take chances, to take risks, and that he can find ways to incorporate, the talents and the ideas and creativity of the people around him, while still holding on to this vision and to the sort of certainty with which he is able to tell a story. He is a great fit for Suzanne and for these books because, like her, he draws so heavily from theme and character. He's also an incredibly self-disciplined director. He treats our crew and cast with such respect, not just in the day-to-day and the minute-to-minute, but in the hours that we keep, and making sure to keep people healthy and sane through the whole process and to bring joy and closeness to it. But it's also great to have a partner who is as sort of obsessed with detail as I am, as obsessed with the ideas and with keeping Suzanne's ideas, her characters, her world building, to bring everything that we get from these books, to keep it alive, and to also make the choices that you have to make when you make an adaptation, and what has to stay and what has to go. So you can't really ask for a better partner. It's been an incredibly joyful partnership, and one that, when Suzanne told us she had a new book for us to read, of course, I was thrilled to read anything that she wrote, thrilled to come back to Panem, but also thrilled to be reunited with Francis. We have an incredible casting director, Deb Zane and Dylan Jury cast the movie, and their attention to detail, their relentlessness, their willingness to just keep going back until we find that perfect person in these younger roles where you're auditioning so many people, really allowed us to find extraordinary talent to really, I think, be able to introduce new faces, but also, to bring some of my most favorite actors to the screen in these roles that are some of the adult roles. For Tom, to start with him, to play a young Coriolanus Snow, you have to have somebody who you believe can grow up to be the villain that Donald Sutherland was in the original movies. But you don't want an actor who's trying to impersonate or mimic. That person has to find it in themselves and find it in performance and make it their own. And Tom brings incredible subtlety, incredible nuance, incredible kind of craft really to this character and to his relationships with, the other cast members. He's an actor who his performance is so dependent on his scene partner. He's not going to give the same reading. When we were in our audition phase or chemistry reads, he's never going to give the same reading twice because he's working with different actors, and each one of them, he's really focused on what they're bringing. He also has to hold his own against the Viola Davises and the Peter Dinklages of the world. That is no small feat. And so with Tom, he's a movie star through and through. He can tell a story in a close-up with just his face. He's smart. He is demanding of himself. And he has a composure and a stillness that felt very true to Snow, and an ability to sort of very subtly make transformations that I think you see towards the end of the movie, where you really see him sort of, his posture changes and his demeanor changes, and just it's very subtle. It's never clunky. It's never loud. It's just seeing a young man become the adult he will be, and seeing Tom make that journey through the film is something that I can't imagine anyone doing better. To cast Lucy Gray Baird is a really huge challenge because in addition to having a very complex character, a young woman who has seen a lot, who's been through a lot, who is a performer, who can hold an audience in the palm of their hand, who can shapeshift according to circumstance, and then sing like nobody's business, somebody whose voice and ability to perform and command an audience it's an essential part of her character. So to be able to do all of that on both the acting side and the musical side, and then to be able to do them at the same time, where so much of the kind of critical moments in the movie are, for her character, moments in which she is expressing herself through music, you have to be able to do a lot of things incredibly well all at once. And, Rachel's voice, it stops you in your tracks. When she sings on set, she chose, which is very unusual, to sing live. It's very rare for a singer or an actor in a musical performance to both have the pipes to do that, the desire to do that, and the love of the music to do that, and the love of performance. And so, we knew from just the emotion and power of those performances, as we shot them, what an extraordinary gift she was for us. And I love that she is not like Snow. She's not a constant character. They are shapeshifters. They meet each other and connect through performance. They are not always who they seem on the surface, and they both know that about each other, and I find that really compelling and feel like these are both actors who are really able to pull that off. With Josh playing Sejanus, that was one of our hardest roles to cast. We actually had to rewrite the script a few times to get the Sejanus voice right, because where he is really the conscience of the film, he is a person whose values are clearest and most passionately held and communicated. Nobody likes a goody two-shoes or really earnest character. It's really easy for a character to feel boring, pedantic. And Josh has this sort of incredible sense of humor and very natural style. He's incredibly grounded as an actor. He is not a showboat. He is not. He brings so much of himself, but he also brings this sort of fundamental goodness, but with a drive that is so great that he also is willing to take some crazy risks that become pretty darn scary for him and ultimately for Snow as well. And Josh came in and he stole the part with his audition. We had just done a rewrite of the role, and so he was performing our new sides. He knocked our socks off. And then I discovered, after I had loved his audition and he had really stolen the part, that he happened to be the boyfriend of Rachel Zegler. And I guess I just wasn't up on my latest Hollywood couples, did not know that, and was really surprised and thrilled to then get an unexpected call from Rachel's representative saying, well, she didn't think she wanted to go straight into another movie, but now that you've just cast her boyfriend, is it too late for you to reconsider her? I think Hunger Games fans, I think they will love the music. I think they will love to see where the music, certainly that they know from the original movies, where some of it came from, and how these stories that were inherited by Katniss were actually passed down through music, and particularly through a song like The Hanging Tree from Lucy Gray. I also think that fans will love to learn. There's so much that I've learned about some of these characters, some of their relationships, to learn more about, Snow's background, to learn about the relationship to Tigress, to learn about, the fact that there was a time when a young Snow might have gone another way. And it's very easy when someone is a villain to imagine that they were born that way. And I think it's very satisfying for the audience to really see the evolution of how a person like Snow, who's being pulled in these different directions, sort of finds his true self, in this case, not his best self, but his true self. I think people will love seeing Trish Somerville's incredible wardrobe designs. I think they will love Dave Cobb and James Newton Howard's music. And I think they will love seeing, say, powerhouses like some of my most favorite actors in the world. The performance, of Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage, Hunter Schafer as an amazing Tigress, and Jason Schwartzman as like a phenomenal sort of predecessor to the original, the first and only, at this moment in history, host of the Hunger Games, and to realize that Caesar Flickerman was the original Nepo baby. And, in this day and age where so many movies are shot with, incredible sort of green screen, digital backdrops, to be able to rely as heavily as we did on practical locations that spoke so vividly and specifically to, the mythology and themes of this material was an incredible opportunity for us. We started out, ordinarily try to start shooting with something easy. We did not do that. We had a little pre-production day that was relatively easy, except for a little bit of a wig crisis. But then our first, week of shooting, we were in the arena, in Wrocław in Poland, in this incredible, historic UNESCO site. Centennial Hall. It is like the monumental scale of it. Thankfully, they gave us lots of places to show us arrows of where to go because you could get lost in there for days. But to see, this location as a practical location and to use this arena as the setting for our games and to start with, like say, from a production standpoint, you had to have all of your tributes, all of their wardrobe, plus stunts on their wardrobe, all of your mentors and their wardrobe, all of your peacekeepers and their wardrobe. It was a lot to start with. And then these big action set pieces. We started with the arena in its destroyed state. And then later on came to the arena prior to that. And so you are starting with, honestly, for every department, some of the hardest work you'll do for the whole show, we started there because that's when we had access to this incredible location. And once we'd seen it, there was no way we weren't going to figure out how to shoot there. But that was the window. We had to make it work. And so we really got to dive into the deep end. And then when it came to some of our, other locations, we had incredible kind of some of the woodsier locations, some of which we shot in Poland near the border of Czechoslovakia. But then to have, in Germany, the exterior of the arena is the Olympic Stadium where Jesse Owens ran, where Hitler and Nazis were sort of showing off to the world the power of the Reich and trying to sort of pass themselves off as global citizens with the Olympics. And that building it's humbling. Its history is humbling. Its architecture is humbling. Where the mentors are watching the games. And where Lucky Flickerman is hosting the games, that's shot in that same compound in an Olympic fencing arena from that same period. So to have these historical buildings that had so much incredible power just because of where they were, what they stood for, and to be able to shoot in those was amazing. And then just some of the scope and scale, the set where the tributes are interviewed by the mentors is an incredible historic site in Leipzig. It looks like a set you would have built in any other movie, but we had just, through our production design team, our locations team, some of the most, jaw-dropping locations I've ever got to work in throughout my career.
Tigress is Corio's cousin, who sort of became a caretaker and like a sibling in some ways because of the hardships that they've faced. They sort of like raised each other in a way. And I don't know, I like to think of her as Corio's sort of home base in a world where he has to do a lot of performing. I think I feel really aligned with Tigress. I mean, on a creative level, I think, I don't know, I feel aligned with her sort of dedication to fashion and turning mundane things into beautiful, extravagant things, and that's sort of her superpower, and that's a superpower that I want and like strive for. So I feel really aligned with that. And I don't know, it's sweet that she's morally really morally sound and solid, and it's a character that's not hard to try and convince yourself that what she's doing is right. I mean, it was so much fun. I filming wise, the bulk of my scenes were with Tom, and he was such an incredible scene partner. I was almost nervous because he's like Juilliard trained. I mean, he's like a professional, and his work ethic is unbelievable. So like, and we kind of had to jump in head first, like with our first day of filming, and I was immediately just like, okay, I feel safe with this person. We can go there when we need to. And like, I'm in really good hands with my scene partner. And then, like, I got to meet and hang out with everybody else, like outside of work, which was really fun. Especially in Berlin, getting to explore that city with everybody was really sweet. And also coming to set, I did come to set a few times to, watch other people's work. I watched Viola's scenes one day. I got to see a bit of Peter in like the watching the Hunger Games room, and oh my gosh, and Jason in that room. Oh, and I just had a front row seat, and all I had to do was watch, which was perfect because he was so entertaining to watch. Francis was so comforting, because I think there was also a bit of like nerves, stepping into this project that is sort of gargantuan in size and in like reverence within like fans and stuff, and immediately upon working with Francis, I felt like taken care of and also safe, and that he's made 3 of these movies before. Like, he's got it down. And that was also just so clear throughout the entire filming process. It was probably one of like the smoothest filming experiences I've ever had. Yeah. Somebody on the team was like set up in a bed in the background of a shot as like a wounded person. Yeah, and me and Josh and Tom had to film this kind of like emotional scene, with the knowledge that was behind us, that was happening behind us, and I feel bad for Tom because it was in his eye line, but that it was really hard to keep it together during that part. And then yeah, Tom and I both love techno also, so we had a good time in Berlin. I think Hunger Games fans will enjoy the sort of like visual departure that this movie takes from the previous ones, and that there's like a time jump, so clearly a lot has happened between then and now, but also just kind of like the fun creative liberties that the production designers and everybody worked on, like who worked on the design and the visuals, what they took and what they kind of made with their imagination and the cool sort of like sci-fi dystopian future, but also the past aesthetic that they created. I think it's really unique.
Sejanus is what I consider to be the moral compass or the heart of the film. He is originally from District 2 and was able to move with his family to the capital after his father came into a good deal of money. And yeah, so I think he knows, tributes being plucked out of the districts. He has a real soft spot for that because he comes from the districts. He's a peer of Coriolanus Snow. They have a bit of a relationship. They're friends with one another, or at least Sejanus values his friendship. I mean, Coriolanus, it's kind of up for you to decide how he feels about Sejanus, but yeah, he really values that relationship, and I think he really, really tries to get Coriolanus to do good. He's got a big heart, to a fault, I think, at certain times. How passionate Sejanus is about changing the world that he lives in. I really liked that. And, I always have a soft spot for characters who, everybody is so accustomed to this status quo and the way that things go, regardless of how totally messed up it might be. And then, you have the outliers that we kind of need in this world that are like, this is not right. Regardless of how many people are telling me that this is the way that things are supposed to go, like, this is not right. And I really admire those kinds of people, and Sejanus is one of those people, and I think that really drew me to him. Yeah, I mean, I have good things to say about everybody in this cast. I mean, you know, I got to spend so much time with everybody, and, you know, Tom and Rachel specifically, we were kind of like, you know, we were together an awful lot. We got to, you know, explore together, kind of go out together and see Germany together, and, you know, they're just amazing, very, very special people to me. I think Jason is the funniest guy I think I've ever met. He's the best. I can't wait for you guys to see him be Lucky Flickerman. He's legitimately the funniest guy alive. I mean, Peter's incredible. Every time he would do a take, he would play. Like, he really would play with the dialogue and with inflections and stuff. You know, he was able to do this thing that I admire so much in actors, where, you know, you say all the same words in the monologue. You have a big monologue. You say the whole monologue. You have to do it over and over and over again because it's film. And each time you do it, there's little bits and pieces that you kind of tweak your tonality. And it has such a different subtext. It has like a completely different meaty energy that just has like slightly different color. And Peter would always give like something really interesting, and you never did the same take twice. It was awesome. I loved watching him do that. Viola is Viola. I mean, she's amazing. She came in and was legitimately so crisp. My jaw dropped, because I'm sure you've seen, you know, bits and pieces of the trailer. She's got this whole thing going on. And when I first saw her come up for like the speech at the reaping, my jaw legitimately dropped. I was like, I got real goosebumps. It was very crazy. It was quite intense. I love Francis Lawrence. I'm sure you've heard this from a ton of other people in the cast, but he's so incredible at being collaborative with his actors, you know, and really making us feel like we can bring ourselves and our ideas to the roles. Which is so gratifying, to feel like you have a hand in creating these characters with the director. You know, it really is like, that's what film is. It's a collaboration of a bunch of people, and Francis, I think, really has that in him. And he just like makes incredible decisions. I mean, he has such a good big picture mentality of like how things should look aesthetically, coloring, you know, he's an amazing director. Yeah, man, I love to mess with Tom. Because he was so, I mean, he's amazing. Like, he was a very dedicated guy. And there was this scene where my mom gives me cookies, and then I give them to Coriolanus, and you know, it's meant to be like a moment where I'm like, here, I can't give you anything, but I can give you this, you know, in an effort to kind of make him feel better about something that was happening. And they gave me real cookies to put in this little box that I was meant to give to him. Unfortunately, the cookies were really good, so I would get the cookies, and then he would give me back the box in between each set, and he was like, you know, the box would get lighter and lighter, and then he would look at me and he'd be like, are there crumbs on your face? Because I was, you know, in between takes, I would just eat the cookies. You know, they were really good. The cookies weren't on camera, so I would eat them, you know? Otherwise, they get stale. They were delicious. Whoever baked those cookies, I mean. I think thematically, it's so poignant. I mean, it just has so much heart. And, you know, how do I put this? It's like, it takes place before the Hunger Games were such a polished, spectacular, you know, event that it ends up being in the original trilogy. And I think because of that, there's this kind of added grit to it. And there's these added stakes and tension that kind of, like, throughout a good portion of the movie, you know, is present. It's incredible. I think they're gonna love the entire film.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.